This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy, your best friend. This is Back to Back, my podcast. Welcome to the show. I hope everybody out there is doing good. And man, it's the middle of March already. Starting to see those early festival lineups leaking out. Crazy, but summer feels like it's just around the corner. And speaking of festival season, you're going to see my guest today on a lot of bills coming up this summer. My guest today is Buku. I can't believe it's taken me this long to get Buku on the show. He and I have a long history, a history I don't share with almost anybody else in the game. He's one of my absolute favorite people, an incredible producer. Buku's new single, Heartbeat, is coming out on 4/20, a date with no humorous significance whatsoever. And it's coming out on Wakan Records. And like I was just saying, this summer, you got to watch out for Buku at Electric Forest, Camp Bisco, Shaky Beats, Dance Festopia, and man, a whole lot more. He's a busy boy. And nothing makes me happier than to say that because I know how hard he's worked to get to this point. Couldn't be more proud of the dude. You gotta go see him if he's in your town. We're gonna get into our conversation in just a second here. Before we do, I just feel like I gotta check in with you guys. I really hope that if you're listening to this show, that you are subscribed to Back to Back. You are getting the episodes every week. You should subscribe to this show. Just click the subscribe button on any app that you're listening on, any site. Every week, you'll get a new episode sent to your device automatically. You don't have to do anything. Just more free content every week from the artists you love and yours truly, who I hope you also love. And whether you've been listening for a while or are checking in for the first time, if you want to help out this show, if you want to help support us, just tell your friends about this show. Put somebody onto it who might not have heard it. Anyone you think who might dig it. You know, we're trying to do something different here at Back to Back. We don't really spend money on advertising, nothing like that. So all of our audience comes from word of mouth. It comes from the community. It comes from you listening right now. And all of that support means a ton, and it really does help. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. If you are a dog, tell other dogs. But for real, it helps us a lot, and I love you guys for it. And check it out. If you want to hear any of the music that me and Buku talk about today, any of the music that my guests and I have talked about on previous episodes, all you got to do is head on over to Spotify and check out the Back to Bangers playlist. I update that every week with all the music from each week's episode. It's got music from the guest, music from me, new stuff, old stuff, everything we talk about each episode. And I'm really stoked for you guys to check it out. It's a great companion to this podcast. The link for that is in the description of this episode. And I've been feeling like it's been too long since I've read some of your guys' emails on the air, too. So I want to hear from you. Email me your questions at backtobackpod@gmail.com. Anything you're wondering about, anything you're curious about, some advice, anything that's going on in your life. If it's a good email, I'll read it out on the air and we can have a little chat. You can also hit me up on all social media at backtobackpod or at Willy Joy on everything. And we've got some more cool ideas for this show that we're cooking up. But for the time being, let's get into this conversation with Buku. I met up with him in Los Angeles. He was playing a show at Exchange that night. You know, he and I go way back. We did some of our first tours together, and he's just the best, man. He's also one of the most unique producers in the game right now, in my opinion. No one is making music like this guy. The way he makes music, the way he thinks about music, it's just unlike anybody else I've ever met. It had been too long since we got to catch up, and man, we just had a good time. So I think you guys are really going to dig this. It's just a good vibe all the way through. Let's get into it right now. This is me and Buku, back to back. Let's go. We We out here, baby. How you feeling in LA?
I'm feeling all kinds of delicious out here. 65 degrees, man. I'll take it.
Yeah, you said it's been what, like 5 degrees in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, we had a snap in Pittsburgh that was like a high of 4 degrees a few days, like wind chills of like -20.
Fuck, man. I feel like that in Pittsburgh feels even worse. Like Pittsburgh is just a cold feeling city to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's damp. It gets damp there. So it's like, and it never like snows enough that there's like a bunch of snow around. It's just slushy.
Right.
It's just all slushy.
Shout out to
Slushy.
the mayor of Pittsburgh, Slushy the DJ. How's Pittsburgh treating you, man? You still out there with your folks?
Yeah. And actually, I just got approved to start looking at some houses. So I got approved for the house loan. So Raves are about to buy me some real estate.
Out in Pittsburgh?
Out in Pittsburgh,
Dude,
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's been like my big happiness over the last week.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Because first of all, I've always loved that you were still living with your folks. That. It's not only endearing to me, but it's but it's, I don't know, like I that's a thing that I think we're trained to be embarrassed about in America.
Yeah.
But you know, it's common in other cultures.
Yeah, it's like most every other culture. It's like, you know, it's this big American thing where it's just like, all right, you're out of college, now you can go fuck yourself and like and just like get into like substantial amounts of debt. And
right.
So luckily, I mean, they've been like supportive of the whole thing, you know, from the jump.
And you like them, right? I mean, you guys get along.
Yeah, we get along great, and like we actually all work from home, and like I have this studio in the basement, and like my dad works in the first floor, and my mother works in the second floor.
That's
so it's like
dope.
during the day, it's like no one bothers each other, and it's like, you know, we all get our work done.
Yeah, and then you're with your family, man. I mean, yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, thanks for airing that out, Willy.
No, but for real, I wanted to air it out. It's another thing I like to talk about on this show is that, you know, trying to break down the myths of like what you have to do to be a successful artist. You know, I like talking about all these different ways people can have a successful career, and that, you know, you don't really have to fit any standard, and that you can live with your folks in Pittsburgh and be killing the game. You know?
Yeah, and it's been going great thus far.
Yeah.
So.
And now you're getting a house, man. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm very, very pleased about that.
Well, and that brings me to like another pillar of what I consider to be your identity, which is like the strong Pittsburgh roots.
Yeah,
you know?
Hell yeah, man.
And now you're laying down those roots. That's
trying to. I've spoken about it with various like Pittsburgh homies. Like, yeah, I just have this like unrelenting desire to prove to people, and especially like other Pittsburgh artists and whatnot, it's like you don't have to like skip town and like go to the West Coast or like New York or like what have you, or Chicago, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. You like, if you can be anywhere near like the vicinity of an airport, you can be killing the game.
100%, man. And I'll guarantee you the house you're about to buy, either you're about to spend a lot less than most people out here in California, or you're about to have a much nicer house.
Yeah.
Either way, you win on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't hurt that Pittsburgh is extremely affordable and livable, and for all those financial reasons.
Right.
I'm just hyped to like, you know, just have like complete focus too.
What was it like growing up in Pittsburgh? What was that experience like?
I moved out to Pittsburgh with my family for my freshman year of high school.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I actually grew up outside of Philadelphia.
What the fuck? Did I know that?
I don't know. I was born in Detroit too.
Yeah, that I think I knew.
Yeah. But I grew up outside of Philadelphia.
Small town?
Just like kind of standard suburb type place. And I mean, that's where we live now, is kind of like a standard suburb. It's a little bit closer to the city. Right. We're a little bit closer to Pittsburgh than we were Philadelphia. We moved to Pittsburgh, and there's a large portion of my family that lived out there too. So it's like, I have a cousin that's 1 year older than me, Breton, and he, just from me like going out to Pittsburgh, I knew like a pretty good amount of his friend group. And so it was like a really easy transition. But I think when I got into college, because I went to Duquesne, which is a city college, it's like right downtown, is when I really like started like loving Pittsburgh and like starting to get like dug in more to like what the city actually was.
Right.
And especially, the whole rave scene and the renegades under the bridges and shit.
Well, even before we get there, I mean, how did you... Musically, you were always a drummer, right? Always playing the drums.
Yeah, I got my first drum kit when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And so I always did like the school programs.
It's a brave choice buying an 8-year-old a drum set.
Yeah, jeez, what were they thinking? I look back on it now, it's just like, give me a flute or something. It's way too heavy.
Yeah, well, and it's asking for annoyance for years.
Oh, Jesus, I was so loud.
Because no 8-year-old is like really good at the drums.
No. No. And it was a very, very noisy household.
Were you playing in school band, that kind of thing at
first?
first?
Yeah. I was doing like the school program, and that's like doing like the concert band, like symphonic kind of stuff.
Right.
So, the snare drum, bass drum, cymbals, the glockenspiel, all that, you know. Shout out glockenspiel, shout out triangle.
Through all of that, I assume once you hit your teen years, you started getting into bands, playing in a bunch of different local bands, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And was it like metal bands? You said you were kind of...
I was in the one band I was in college that was kind of like more towards the stoner rock, kind of sludgy. It was like the hardest I've ever played a drum kit.
Right.
So I can't play, like hands bleeding after practicing and shit. But actually in high school, I was in a bunch of jam bands actually.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I would fuck around and like jam with a bunch of people.
That's right. I always forget you have this jam band side of you.
I do. Like I love Humphreys McGee.
When the first time you were telling me about that, I was like startled by the depth of your fandom for Humphreys McGee.
Dude, I love that band. I actually saw them like 2 weeks ago in Pittsburgh.
Of course you did.
I was playing at Halloween in Florida, and actually my set was competing with their second set.
Okay.
And I was so dearly disappointed
That must have been a conflicting moment for you.
I know. I was about to just fuck off.
So was that kind of your introduction to electronic music through kind of the jam stuff or the burner side of it? Was that the side door you went in?
Not really, honestly. Like, I kind of got interested. It was probably around the same time as I was like really getting into the jam bands. Like I loved Fish too, like run the gamut. Like
right.
I loved all that shit. But I was actually kind of in the same time getting into Boards of Canada, super heavy. I don't know, it like scratched that itch of a young stoner Robert.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the Aphex Twin, like I think I was listening to what the fuck else, like Crystal Method and stuff, like just like kind of those rando things. I think like Infected Mushroom too. Like some of that psytrance stuff I was kind of starting to explore. But Boards of Canada was like my one,
right?
Yeah,
it's like all vaguely psychedelic. All probably sound really good when you're stoned. Yeah. So wait, which Boards of Canada album was your entry?
Oh man, shit, what's the Music Has the Right to Children? Is that the one with Peacock Tail on it? Do you know?
Honestly, no, I don't remember.
I can't remember.
That was the big one for a lot of people. That was how I learned
Roy
about
G.
them.
Biv too, obviously.
Yeah.
Which I think it's Music Has the Right to Children. It was with because Peacock Tail, I believe, was my introduction to them, and I mean, still to this day, I just like adore the track. That's actually how I kind of got started making beats too.
Okay,
was like in Ableton, kind of making that kind of, I guess, trip hop, sort of down tempo, experimental stuff. Which I'm sure was a lot less experimental than I thought it was at the time.
Of course.
Of
course. But it's the same as like when you're an 8-year-old with a drum kit, man. It's, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
You can't have high level ideas before you learn, how to play the instrument.
Exactly.
Or how to use the software.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, were you just a stoner in high school? Like, what kind of kid were you? Who did you hang out with?
I don't know. Well, like, because I did the whole like band scene, so I've the marching band included, and that's like, I mean, ultimate band nerd when it comes down to it is like marching.
Yeah.
But I also played ice hockey, which is like a pretty opposite end of that spectrum with like a whole hell of a lot more testosterone.
You're right. So you could kind of float from scene to scene a little bit.
So I floated from scene to scene, and like, I I mean, I'm making myself out to be like some big stoner kid in high school. I mean, I smoked weed, but like
Well, yeah.
it wasn't like that. You know?
Yeah.
Until my parents caught me, and they were not too happy with it.
Yeah, the parents don't really make they don't see the gradient of like, oh, it's just a little weed.
Yeah, no. But yeah, so I would float around there, and too, like a lot of like the hockey team as well. They were like super into music, and they were like kind of like, you know, the fringe stoner kids too. So it's like we everyone was fucking around with like jam bands and everything. So it's like, I don't know, it wasn't like a push or a pull, but it was kind of everyone was like on the same page in some kind of weird way.
Yeah, it's interesting that you had that experience in high school because, you know, jam bands and sort of quote unquote electronica like Boards of Canada, that to me is very college material.
Yeah.
It's
like college Pulp Fiction posters. And
yeah,
shit.
exactly, man.
Yeah.
But if you had that experience in high school, what were you into at the point you were leaving for college? Musically, where were you at that time?
You know, I think when I was going off to college is when I was like super into the more progressive sounds of like metal and rock and whatnot. And I think I was like kind of borderline getting into hardcore because I was like super into hardcore for a few years, especially like the beginning of college. And I think, if I can remember correctly, it was kind of like bridging that gap between high school and college. I was like, you know, Acacia Strain and all that stuff. I was like super into BT Bam and shit. Like all of that stuff. Oh, God. Porcupine Tree, too. I think that's a band. I think that's a band.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure
you can tell me it's a band. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll just go with it. But like it was kind of Porcupine Tree. Oh God, I'm gonna sound like such an idiot if that's not a band. But that was like one of my favorites, and that was kind of like a little bit more in the progressive end. So a little bit like not as harder edge, but like kind of running that spectrum from like softer edge to like the hardcore like breakdown.
And were you doing early production by that point too?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually fucking around with GarageBand loops like in high school, like just kind of experimenting with it. And actually what really got me involved with it before I was really doing the beat side of things, through like some summer jobs and whatnot, I saved up and got like a multi-track interface for my computer. And so I was actually multi-tracking myself playing drums, and I taught myself how to play guitar and bass and keys. And so I was
all
like
self-taught?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not drums. I mean, drums is professionally.
Yeah.
But guitar is all self-taught, bass, all that stuff. So I was like multi-tracking myself, pretty much doing covers of stuff because I didn't have like the chops to really create.
Yeah.
So like, oh God, I can't even imagine what it sounds like. There's some cover of me playing Comfortably Numb floating around on some godforsaken hard drive in my closet of me playing all the parts and singing on it. Which
did that ever make it to the internet?
Fuck no, that did not make it to the internet.
Leaving up to you leaving your house for college
and
you know you're playing all this music, you're starting to produce, you're learning all these different instruments. Did you know at the time that music was kind of the thing for you?
Oh yeah, I attended a music program in college. So like I was going in and you had to audition and do like a separate music theory test and like bass knowledge test to get into the music program. So I mean, I knew I was going to be doing something music in some kind of capacity. And I was applying for the music technology program. So that like the whole like high school multi-tracking, all that stuff like I talked about, it was kind of, I was approaching it because I wanted to do studio work. And alongside the studio program, there was like the formal music theory training and like instrumental training. Like having an applied instrument, which mine was percussion.
Right. So even leading up to college, like in high school, you kind of knew that music was the focus for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was going to be, in some way it was.
Right.
You know? I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I never really had like, you know, like the finish line.
Were you a good student? Did you do all right in school?
Yeah, I did pretty good in school.
Yeah. How did your folks feel about you going in for music?
They were supportive the whole way. I mean, they were the ones that bought me that drum kit when I was 8.
True.
So it's like,
what did they do?
My dad is a salesperson for the software company, and my mother is an assistant to an interior designer.
Okay.
There's no one in my family that has like anything to do with music too. I was very fortunate in that regard. It didn't take too much of a fight,
Yeah.
Because you always hear and I know friends of mine personally that it's been a battle with their folks the whole way. Even into their success,
Right, right. Yeah. Some people, their parents wouldn't believe it until they saw their kid playing for, 10,000 people or something.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And even then,
my dad probably took just a hair more convincing than my mother, because he's kind of he's the business end of things, and his whole nature, mathlete nature, he's a numbers guy. It wasn't until I started bringing the paycheck by and be this is working. And it's oh, okay. He loves it now. I mean,
right,
it's I don't want that to make it sound like he was I was battling my phone.
No. I mean, that's the beauty of a numbers guy, right? Is that once they see the results, you can't. It's a fact, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Once you got into school, how was that school for you? I mean, did you find it valuable? Because for me, I have a really similar story, and I think we've talked about this in the past.
Oh, yeah.
I went to school basically for a music technology program as well. That was a similar focus, sort of half classical composition and half engineering. And for me, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot, but I look back at it now, and I look at what I'm doing, in present day, and it's well, a lot of what I learned back then I don't really use for what I do now.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree. We probably have a very similar outlook after the fact. The one thing that I kind of always, because I'll get asked from time to time about other younger kids who are looking at going into a music program and whatnot, and I like to be very honest with it. It's listen, you're gonna get out what you put into it.
Yeah.
And you can't go into it expecting to just be cracking off the charts as soon as you graduate.
Right. That's the thing. A music program, there's kind of this expectation that, somewhere along the way, someone will just sort of hand you this opportunity or unlock this door for you that you wouldn't have been able to unlock unless
no.
Yeah, that's not the way it works at all.
Yeah.
The biggest benefits anyone can get out of a music program is you're starting your own network, because you'll be with other people who want to make music and are excited about making music. And if you can find, your people in that whole group,
absolutely,
like-minded people, then that's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having that foundation.
On the same subject as foundation too, the network is very important, and I did find that it's so for my manifestation of a music career that came from it, I taught myself most all of how to do that stuff, but it wasn't without the foundation of knowledge that a lot of the classes taught me, especially the music theory and whatnot. What might take someone who doesn't have any knowledge of that, hours to construct something, you can just go and it just happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the foundation of knowledge that programs like that can teach are amazing. But you're not gonna go into college unless I guess you go to Icon or something. You're not gonna sit down at just any other music program, and you're not gonna go, this is how you make a roaring bass sound in Serum.
Right, right.
So
exactly.
So it's but in those studio classes, it's I learned the physics of a compressor and stuff. So it's things like that, and just kind of the conceptual end of it.
Yeah, and as you were just talking right now, you kind of just connected something in my brain that I think is a really good way to talk about your sound and how you've kind of evolved as an artist. Because something I've always loved about you is, you said you were self-taught in a lot of ways as far as, production software and constructing, arranging a song in software, all that kind of stuff. But then you are also formally trained in a different aspect, the theory aspect, the composition aspect. I never really thought about it in that way, but I think that's a really good way to sort of summarize how you make music, because there is this very musical, almost classical backing to a lot of what you do, but then the way you make it in the software is crazy, and it's, I think, very unique to you. And I don't really know anyone else who kind of makes it the way you do because you were self-taught.
Yeah.
And the restrictions you would put on yourself in the early days, I remember, because eventually you switched to Logic, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I switched to Logic pretty early on. That
Okay.
was like in college, actually. So I've been using it for a minute.
And one of my favorite things that I would always tell people about you that no one could believe was that, you were just using only the built-in stock Logic synths and the stock Logic plugins and all that, which is still mind-blowing to me to think about. But then, I think that's how you kind of get to whatever you want to define the Buku sound as. This kind of, this really formal classical training combined with this sort of completely wild, untrained, like studio setting.
God damn, that's a fantastic. See, you put that in my head because that question comes up. It's just like, how do you describe your sound?
Right.
And I mean, that is as far as like the like bridge of concepts, that is a very good way to sum it up.
Well, because I've never known how to define. You have a sound. You more so than a lot of people. You have I think a really strong sound, but it is hard to define. And I really think it's somewhere in between completely self-taught, like completely isolated.
Somewhere between Gregorian chant and Skrillex.
Perfect. That's your new DJ bio right there.
Boy, that's it.
So was this a 2-year college, 4-year college?
4-year college.
Okay.
So it was a full accredited college. So
And you went the full 4?
I did more than the 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I had to do a summer class because I failed one.
Wait, what did you fail?
It was a freshman level writing course.
Oh, yeah.
And I put it off until my last semester, my senior year.
Of course you did.
And you know what? Now that we're airing this out, I had this goddamn fucking bastard of a professor. And he just like, I was like graduating. I was a music, like he knew I was the music kid. And he was like, the shit that he was doing, he was like breaking down words and like into like the Greek like prefixes and like all that shit and like breaking down the words. And I'm just like, please tear my fucking eyes out. Like it's like I'm about to go like DJ for a living.
Right.
And by that time I knew like I was going to do the Buku thing. But so I had to do a summer class because me and him didn't really see eye to eye.
Fair enough. Well, hey man, you're here at the top of an LA hotel and you're about to do a sold out show tonight, so fuck that guy.
Yeah. Right about that.
So over those 4 years, did you find that network of people we were talking about? Was that when you started to find like a community, feel a little more connected to your interests?
I kind of had my college crew, even in like the music program. I had like a crew of people, but we weren't really like in the same exact like worlds. Like I have a handful of guys who are still doing it now. They do like corporate sound and like installs and stuff. So they'll like travel to the convention centers and set up like these huge rooms, these like huge rigs for like these talks and like and whatnot.
That's cool work, man. And those guys honestly are probably making more money than we are.
Dude, they are crushing it. Yeah, my one buddy, he like bought a house like 3 years ago off of that shit.
I'm saying.
Yeah. 25 years old buying a house. It's like crazy. But so I had like those guys, and those are like still some of my super close friends. But I did like, I think around like my junior year, it wasn't until I really turned 21 that I was going out to some of these evenings and like weeklies that were there. And so like kind of as a young gun, I was producing way before I was DJing.
Right.
I would kind of like show up and I had like started putting out some of this music.
As Buku?
As Buku, yeah.
Okay.
And so
was Buku your first project? I mean, like your first public-facing things that came online, it was as Buku?
Actually, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Actually, wait, no, that's not true.
Okay.
I had something that I was doing by Balatsky Productions, which I mean just sounds fucking terrible. And I was just making these god-awful hip-hop beats.
Right.
Just the most caucastic hip-hop beats you could possibly imagine. But then, I mean, like the first, like for real, like having like for real products, it was Buku. So I mean, like anything before that was so insignificant that maybe like 15 people heard it at the most,
And when you started putting music online as Buku, did it pick up pretty quickly? I feel like after a few tunes, people really started to take notice.
I mean, it wasn't like an overnight, like, wake up and it's like, holy shit. But I did have I was doing these like pretty raw dubstep tunes that were completely impossible to DJ. They were like structured, because it was when I was listening to like progressive music and I didn't know DJ.
Right.
And so I would like throw in like an extra bar here, like an extra, like do like time signature changes and shit.
Yeah. You were being too musical.
Exactly. Yeah. Like too musical for my own good. So I was like putting out stuff like that and like people really liked it, but obviously you couldn't play it like, cause it was just impossible to play.
You're right. Yeah.
And so like some of that stuff kind of cracked off, and because of like the dubstep subreddit too, some of those people showing some love and like getting it shared around. But it wasn't until like I made my tune Janky, which was 2012 or 2013 that I made it. I can't remember if it came out right then, because I think I put it off. I put it out and it was getting really good reception, and I got a message from Rich from UKF. He was just like, yo, this is like crazy. Yeah, it was right. It was right around like, when UKF was like everything.
Yeah, just crushing it.
Yeah. And so he hit me up. He's like, we want to put this out, da da da. And that was like really what got the ball rolling.
Yeah. That's a big deal, man, to have, a big respected label reach out like that pretty early on. Did it, once they put that out, how was that experience, like first label releasing experience?
Oh, I was like beside myself. I didn't know what to do. It's just like, this is fucking crazy. Because like, especially with the UKF network too, they have like the craziest mailing list, like the craziest like VIP mailing list.
Right.
So it's going out and like, it was getting spins by like, I think it was Mr. Jam. How to spin, how to
all
play on it.
All the big UK guys, right?
Yeah, like all the BBC Radio 1 guys. I know Diplo, he played that track. He actually spun it back on the show.
Oh,
and he was just like, this is a new one from Buku. He was saying something like, this is the direction that dubstep is heading.
Ooh.
And then he started again. And
that's a good
like,
pull quote for the bio.
Yeah, you feel like, oh, we were using that for a minute.
Yeah, I bet you were.
Then, it was like, I think Craze was doing a Diplo and Friends show. Bro Safari did one, and they were all like rinsing out like some of those early tracks of mine. And I was like, I listened to a few of them live, and I was like with my homies. We're just like, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. It makes me think of an interesting idea, which is that you put out these, initial first few tracks. This is the first time people hear Buku. They get this idea of the sound that you're making, right? And it's successful. People are playing the tracks, big name DJs. After that kind of initial entrance to the scene, how did you did you feel pressure that you had to keep making things that these guys who were now paying attention to you would like? Did that affect your creative process at all?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Because
because leading up to that, you're just making shit you think sounds cool, right?
Exactly, with like no real direction. It's like that's kind of that raw inspiration where it's just like literally before you're really like, getting played out by some of those guys, it's like you're literally just making what sounds good to you in your head, and you're comparing it to the tracks that you enjoy. But when you start hearing it like literally back to back with like these tracks like in a mix, when it's like what your song sounds like A-B'd immediately with something else that's cracking off, You're just like, holy shit, it's like, all right, this is what I got to do.
Yeah,
like,
you get this greater awareness of how the music you're making fits into the overall ecosystem of what's happening at the time.
And you're always trying to like strike while the iron's hot too. So it's like this tune like did really well. It's just like, how can I have another milestone tune like this?
Right. And I think that, and I want to hear how that went for you in a second, because I think that can be dangerous in a way, right? Because if you start overanalyzing it and you lose that raw inspiration and try to just recreate the moment you already had, which I think we've all done it at some point, and we all definitely know people who do it all the time.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it's a slippery slope, man, because, some people can kind of have the one hit and then understand what was cool about it and make some more stuff in that vein. But more often, I think, if you're trying to do that, what ends up happening a lot of the time is you make just sort of a pale shadow of the last two.
Yeah, you're just trying to copy yourself pretty much.
Yeah. Where did you fall in that? Do you think you kind of fell prey to that?
Yeah, I did. I think so. Because there was a while, and I remember even, seeing comments about it, I was kind of falling into this, formula of, in, the sound design, because it was, talking about me kind of self-taught using the same synths and stuff.
Right.
I found myself using it probably a little too much. It was starting to get even just a little dry for me, where it was not exciting.
It wasn't as enjoyable.
Yeah, it wasn't as exciting, but I kind of had this idea in my head. I was just I got to do the same thing so I can continue this success and whatnot.
When you were just in Logic using all the stock Logic stuff, which I always come back to it because it's such a crazy idea to me. Did you ever think about not doing that? Why did you stick to just the stock Logic stuff?
Well, I got so used to it, and the ES2 is the name of the synthesizer in Logic, and I taught myself that's the synth that I learned how to wobble in. You always remember making the wobble for the first time, assigning the LFO and all that shit. I taught myself, and I just learned it inside and out to the point that I could probably think of a sound that I wanted, and I could come pretty close to duplicating it, what's in my head.
Yeah, well, and that's really important. I mean, because I was sort of saying it as maybe a negative, but you actually make a really good point, which I'm a big fan, a big proponent of keeping your toolbox small and knowing exactly how to use every tool in that box.
Well, but to answer your original question is literally I got Massive. And I opened it up, and I was just "Fuck this!" I know, I'm spending all this time trying to build this patch in Massive because everyone's doing Massive. I was I can pop up in ES2. I have one of my saved presets that is somewhat similar, and I know how I can tweak my own preset to create what I'm trying to make here, cluelessly, and endlessly.
And in a way, if you had switched over to Massive, probably your music would have started sounding less unique in a way,
Potentially, yeah. Who the hell knows?
Yeah. I mean, it's just speculation. But
exactly,
I think by using tools other people weren't using, you kept a certain purity to it.
Yeah.
So, going back to what we were saying about once you got a little notoriety in the scene, it maybe started to affect your creative process in a way. Did it take a long time to sort of find that balance again of really feeling like you were just making what you wanted to make?
Yeah, I think it took a little bit of falling out of love with the music initially as time was going on.
Yeah. And the scene in general.
The scene in general, and I was just man, I'm just I don't feel this music doesn't feel inspired. I don't know if it sounds inspired to other people, but it kind of took this heavy, just conceptual. It's just what am I doing? What do I need to do? Or I don't know. There's no real solid breakthrough in that sense.
Right.
Maybe I think my tune Front to Back was definitely as far as conceptual and creative breakthroughs. That was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
But it was the moment I'm talking about is probably just a little bit before that.
Right. It was a process leading up to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that tune, which is an amazing song,
Thank you.
It was your new stamp of this is
that
the Buku
was
sound
the
now.
new that was another milestone tune,
right?
That we were talking about before, the janky from previous and all D's of previous. And
stuff. All D's. I think that was probably the first one I heard of yours.
Right,
was all D's, and definitely, around that time. I mean, we're moving into the time when you and I met and started touring together.
Yeah.
Which it was pretty early on in your career. And was early on in my career as a solo artist
Right,
touring.
yeah.
So we were kind of learning all this shit together.
Exactly.
At the same time.
We were both very much like, just learning.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember, we would go to these shows and you would play Janky and all these, and those were the songs, the crowd would just go crazy.
Yeah,
at those shows. That was definitely kind of your signature move at that time.
For sure, yeah.
And man, I mean, I've been thinking about this knowing that we were going to have this conversation. I have so many good memories from those tours, man.
Yeah.
Not only because
Yeah.
they were a lot of fucking fun, but I'm just proud of us for kind of doing what we did at that time.
Yeah.
Because there was this kind of like DIY spirit to it.
There really was. There really was. And not everything was amazing all the time,
No. I mean, it was very much... It was DIY. We put it together ourselves. I mean, our teams helped us, but we weren't.
But our teams were very much part of that DIY.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like we were not signed by.
Yeah, the whole thing had this kind of ramshackle vibe.
Yeah.
We weren't plugged into any big agencies, any big touring networks, any big promoters. All of it was kind of just us, using the people we'd met along the way, our own personal networks, convincing people that we deserve to be there.
Exactly,
you
yeah.
know? And I just...
Convincing people to let us take over their room for an evening.
Yeah, yeah. And just the idea... It's something I wish I could do more of even in this day and age. Coming together with just somebody else whose music I really like, being like, I like you, I like your music, I think we'd have fun on the road together, and let's just do it. And we were like, okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
I don't remember who approached who about it.
It was so long ago.
I know. It was, The first tour was, because we did two. The first one, I think, was 2013, probably.
That sounds about right.
And then the next one was 2014, probably. Yeah. That vibe of just, we deserve to be here. I think we're doing something cool.
Yeah.
Let's just go out there and do it. And that was it, man. Mm-hmm. And we were just stoked to be doing anything.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think there was also this spirit, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but for me, there was this spirit of we believed in ourselves a lot. Like I think we both knew even at that time that what we were doing was cool. And that we liked what we were doing. We thought it was important enough that other people should pay attention to it. There was a certain confidence combined with a certain frustration that the industry at large
100%
wasn't taking it as seriously.
It was like I know well, we talked about it plenty we both had this mindset of almost defiance, if you will.
That's a great word.
We were kind of like frustrated that we weren't getting picked up,
Right.
But like at the same time, it's just like you said, there was a confidence. It's like, I know what we're doing is cool.
Yeah.
Like we know, we dig it. Like other people seem to dig it. It's like maybe the industry at large doesn't dig it, or they're just not listening, or they don't give a fuck,
Right.
But,
And that's part of it too, is, at the time, for me, that frustration manifested in kind of a bummer way where I was like, I'm just being slept on. It was a frustrating thing. But looking back at it now, I think probably what was happening was more just of what happens to everyone, which is that the industry is big and honestly doesn't pay attention to almost anything. I don't think anyone was judging us negatively.
It's really easy to read it that way, though.
Yes.
That people are thinking negatively if they're not paying attention.
Right.
It's
exactly.
really, really easy to think that.
Yeah.
And it feels fucking bad.
It does. It's a trap that I think all of us fall into at one point.
It's just part of the creative,
Yeah.
Like it's just part of like having a creative outlet and making a career out of a creative outlet. Because obviously, more people listening equals more dollar signs.
Yes,
and you're very self-conscious because it's your child that you're putting out there. It's like these things that we work on by ourselves for hours and hours and hours, weeks and months, and da.
Yeah.
And when you put it out and like it doesn't get the reception, and it's not even the reception isn't there. It's just that there's not enough people paying attention, and it's just like, well, people must hate it,
right, exactly, and
it's not true for people that are listening.
Exactly,
people are not disliking your music because they're not listening to it. It's just literally you just have to create this audience,
right, and it can take a long time. I think both of us are good examples of how you can have kind of a slow burn career.
Absolutely,
like you said,
yeah.
there wasn't that overnight moment, and certainly that's true for me too.
Yeah.
And what was so rewarding about that first tour for you and me too was defiance is a great word for it. Like it felt defiant, and then once we got out there and went on the road, a lot of those shows were pretty good. You know, that first tour in particular.
The first tour, that was great, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those shows were really good. It was a positive experience overall, and it kind of gave me that confidence that, like, okay, we had this idea, we executed it to, pretty much the best of our ability, and it went pretty well. Like, overall, there were some markets there that you and I kept coming back to for years afterwards that I think...
Milwaukee's of the world.
Man,
hell yeah.
Milwaukee was the big one for me, man.
Hell yeah.
I can still go back there, and it's...
I was just there, actually.
Yeah. I fucking love Milwaukee, man. And those early tours with you and me, that was what started it out at the Miramar Theater.
Was that your first time out there, really?
No, because I was in Chicago.
Well, you have the Chicago connection.
So
that's
I had
right.
been coming out there for a while, but that was the first time, like those first few times you and me did the Miramar together. That was the first time I really experienced the feeling of growing an audience in a specific market.
Oh yeah, it felt like there were listeners.
Yeah, and it felt like we would play there, and the show would go really well, and then we'd come back, 6 months later, and play there again, and you'd see a lot of the same faces.
Exactly.
And they would have told their friends, and the show grew. And that was for me probably the first time I've experienced that in a specific market.
That's a good point. I mean, I would probably agree to that to an extent, like, because it was you and me. We returned there a few times.
Yeah.
And it was one of those places before, like, you would be talking to people and they would like bring up tracks of yours that they liked, and like, at least for me, like people it's just like, oh, these tracks are crazy, and it's just like, oh wow, like these people are like paying attention out here,
right? And you'd go back and they'd talk about the last show, the last time you were there.
It's like, oh, last time was so sick.
And fucking lying around the block, and not to gas us up too much, but that shit felt good. At
gas me up, Willy. Gas me up.
Yo, but that shit felt great at the time.
It really did. It really did. It was rewarding too, because like out of that whole like we said, that whole defiance and like frustration, like finding that like glimmer of hope and success was just like, holy shit,
right.
Awesome.
And the idea that, we can do this on our own. It was just a good vibe, man. I think between you and me, our styles at the time really meshed. So much fun, dude. I remember you would always end your set every night with the same Danny Brown song.
Yes.
And I would come out and just jump around, and we get the whole crowd super hype.
31 years old, so I'd have been through all the desert. Wait, was it that one?
Yeah. Oh, man. And it was just...
Wait, what? Oh, shit. Was it Dope Song?
Yeah, it was Dope Song.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was your closing song.
That's
every
right.
time. It was just about you and me having fun.
Exactly,
and I think maybe that's what worked for the audience, too.
I remember we were in Virginia Beach, and we were jumping around, and I think I was taking a selfie... And we were jumping around to like in between our sets. I was playing that tune.
Yeah.
And you slapped me in the chest so fucking hard. I had a bruise on my chest. I'll have to dig that up. I mean, it was like, because we were just jumping around, just like not giving a fuck. You're just like, wham!
I have no memory of this.
I was wearing these red tinted sunglasses from God knows. They weren't mine.
There's a picture of those. I remember those sunglasses.
Yeah.
See, and we should just tell some stories for a minute, man, because we've never gotten a chance to like just sit down and reminisce about those days. And it was an important time for me, man. Like I still think very fondly of those tours.
Me too.
Like
Me
both
too.
of us have gone on to play, ostensibly cooler shows and be ostensibly more professional artists. But some of the shit that we were doing back then, man, that was still some of the most fun I've had.
Absolutely. All through like all the fun situations, all while stumbling along, trying to figure out what the hell we're doing.
Exactly, man. And, it's kind of what you were saying about those early songs you were making. Mm-hmm. There was this rawness to it. We didn't really have a frame of reference for what we were supposed to do. In terms of booking a tour, in terms of playing a show. We were just doing what we thought was cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know for sure for me, I was still, even at that point, trying to figure out what the hell and how the hell to like structure a set together for like a touring set.
I remember talking to you about that because I didn't really have that issue because I came from.
But you came from DJ.
Yeah, I was a DJ first, and I DJ'd for a long ass time before I even got into production.
Yeah.
So for me, I felt good about that. But then from the producer angle, I was looking at the way you were structuring your sets around your own productions.
Yeah, right.
Which for me was a new concept at the time.
Yeah.
You know, now that's sort of just a given that every DJ, of course, is going to structure their sets around their tunes.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I do now. But at the time, I hadn't really been thinking like that.
I think
for very
it was
long.
honestly like subconscious for me. Even like I didn't have like a clear idea of what I was doing. But like as far as like structuring the stuff around it, now I do.
Right.
You know, I've played enough now. But yeah, then like kind of like structuring your set around like your like pillars,
right?
Like, you know, having these like high points.
Yeah. No, and I remember. I mean, you hadn't been DJing that long at that point.
Hell no,
right?
No. I'm sure it showed in some situations.
Oh, I'm sure it did, but I think it was a good mix, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it was a good mix because both of us had sort of party vibes to it, and we were both new to certain aspects of thinking about the set.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think it was a good balance. That Virginia Beach show, man, I was writing down some memories I had of touring, and when I knew I was coming to talk to you, there was one, I don't know if you remember this, after we played that Virginia Beach show, God knows what we did for several hours after that, but I have a very concrete memory of us waiting in the ocean as the sun was rising that night, drinking out of a bottle of tequila with some friends we had met along the way. And that's like a very strongly imprinted memory in my head. You're looking at me like you don't remember any of this.
Oh, no.
Because we definitely ended up on the beach.
Oh, no. Wasn't it cold as fuck?
I think it was maybe a little cold. Like it wasn't summer.
No, I remember going on the beach. We didn't wade in the water because it was like
some of us definitely waded in the water.
Okay, I remember. What have I done? No, okay, I do remember going on the beach now that you mention it.
I mean, you know, just to keep it 100 about that tour. I mean, we were drinking a lot on that tour.
A lot.
Pretty much every show.
Yeah. And you don't drink all that much, and you didn't drink all that much, even surrounding it, but for God knows what reason.
We went in, man. Yeah. Just us hanging out. I felt like partying.
I've been told that I can have a catalyzing effect.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of all things rolled into one. It was like the partying and getting loose and like kind of the frustration and defiance and
having a bunch of good shows in there and feeling like, okay, maybe we can work through this too.
Exactly, yeah.
Like there was a little bit of a celebratory, like we're out here.
Yeah,
it
was just like, we're doing this shit. Yeah,
I miss those vibes, man.
Yeah, it was good.
Those shows were so wild. So you know, we did that tour, right? And it felt pretty good. And so we got back together for this second tour. And, you know, it didn't go as well as the first tour. I remember the first date we did of the tour, we were stoked to be like back out and doing it. And we booked out like for doing a DIY thing. I think there was maybe 15 dates.
Yeah, it was more dates than the first one.
Yeah, more dates than the first one.
It was like double the dates, I think.
Some pretty legit venues.
Yeah.
You know, all that good kind of shit. And I remember... The first date, I had to look this up to remind myself, but the first date...
You're blocking it out of your memory, probably.
Well, yeah, because it was in Austin, Texas, if you recall
this. Oh, God, dude.
And like, it was a really nice venue. It was like...
Beautiful venue.
Yeah, beautiful venue. We showed up. I was like, ooh, okay, we're moving up now. This is looking good. We did a sound check. Everything sounded great. I mean, I think... there were less than 10 people at that show. First show of the tour, it was like, so this is what it is. Right. It was like, all right.
No, literally, I think there was like 12 tickets sold or something.
Yeah, it was really
And I mean,
bad.
it was actually, you know, not to like, in some of our defense, there was like some kind of crazy like switchovers happening. And so like our show, like the promotion just got like, filed away or like shuffled away.
Yeah,
and,
I
like,
think maybe the venue like wasn't even officially open yet. It was a new venue.
It was something like that.
That.
But
other people were in town.
Oh, no.
But I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, that was.
and that, I think that was probably the worst show of the tour.
It had to. God, can't get much worse than that.
But, just being honest, it wasn't the most well-attended tour.
Yeah,
We had a few good shows in there, but it was not really the same vibe as
No, it
the
wasn't.
first time
Yeah,
around.
for sure.
Not that we weren't having a great time
Exactly,
together,
yeah.
all of that, and still having a lot of really, like, crazy experiences. Throughout all of this, all the shit that happened once we played the shows, all the after party, I mean, we got into some silly situations.
Yes, we certainly did. I'm curious what your notes say. What's your situations?
Hold on. Let me pull out. We should just tell some stupid stories. One of my favorites that I think about fairly often, actually, because it just warms my heart, was when a lot of these shows would be close together geographically. And so for a lot of these weekend runs, we would rent a car and drive around together. Mm-hmm. And some of those drives were some of my favorite parts.
I loved those drives.
Yeah, just shooting the shit. And my favorite...
And like sharing the music.
Sharing music, because we come from sort of similar, but then also very different.
Vastly different, but also like similar veins.
Yeah. Like a lot of the music you liked, but I'd never heard, and maybe vice versa.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, a lot of the sharing of music and just ideas flying around. My favorite was us driving through the redwood forests.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that shit?
What was that in between?
So
that
we
must
were
have been
going
like San
from
Francisco?
San Francisco up to Arcata.
Fuck, that's far.
Yeah, it was like a 5-hour drive. It was a long
and it's
drive.
windy.
Yeah. So like slow driving, windy roads, beautiful fucking national forest.
Yeah.
This was around the time we couldn't afford videographers or anything, and you had the GoPro on like a selfie, like a juiced up selfie stick.
Yeah, dude.
And so we were literally like our own videographers.
Yeah.
At a certain point.
Well, I was doing the little recaps.
You were like recapping both of our shows. I think at a certain point I bought one of my own, so we had this like multi-cam footage.
Yeah, I was like running around filming you, and then you were like running around.
I would play and you would shoot it, then you would play and I would shoot it. You were cutting together these hilarious little recaps. And so I remember stopping in the middle of the redwood forest and us sort of like doing these stupid, I don't even know.
Little photo shoot.
Photo shoot.
I remember exactly what the photos look like too.
I do too, man. Yeah, they look pretty good, I think.
They're not bad.
Yeah, for us just taking them ourselves.
Yeah. Minus the selfie stick.
Right. But I just remember that drive, man. I remember just very fondly. I don't know what we were talking about, but it's just a beautiful setting.
Yeah.
We were on our way from one cool show to another cool show in a city I'd never been to before.
Yeah.
All that kind of shit, man.
Yeah, that was fun. There was a few of those stops. There was like a Midwest stop and like Springfield. Was it Springfield?
We were in Missouri there.
Missouri, yeah. I think that was another place that we had a few stops that we were doing rental cars for.
And kind of just driving through these random ass towns.
Those drives are fun, man. I remember those fondly as well.
I don't want to go too far down memory lane because you and I can just turn off the recorder and keep doing
I know
this.
we could. Or we could honestly have a series.
No. Maybe we'll do a bonus the next time we get together. Tell a lot more of these stories.
We'll have to, if we do that, we'll have to like both look at the dates and then just like break off a few.
That'd be good. No, we'll commit to doing that the next time we get together.
That.
Because there'll definitely be more parts to this. So, moving on from that tour. First of all, I want to ask you, in your opinion, why do you think the second tour we didn't do as well as the first tour? Because usually if two artists go out and have a successful tour, the next time they go out, you'd expect it to at least like be as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Why do you think it didn't work as well the second time
around?
Well,
I mean, you can blame, a good handful of things all the time, every time something doesn't go the way you planned it. For some reason, I feel like there's something that sticks out in my mind that it was so like last minute put together.
Yeah. We did force it a little bit, right?
It was a little bit forced. And, that's kind of like a product of us and our teams kind of learning the ropes along with us. You know, maybe our team knew a little bit more than we did. Obviously, they did to like book all the gigs and whatnot, but it was kind of like last minute. We stumbled into it, and now looking back on it with the experience that I have now, like planning tours and like structuring promotion and stuff, you can obviously blame it on that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know?
I mean, and that I think is maybe what I would say or point to as where we went wrong, which was the first time. We keep going back to this idea. The first time was like very raw. It's the same thing we were talking about when you first started making music.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know what we were supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And then the second time around, we had an idea of how to do it professionally.
Yeah.
But we didn't really put together what you really need for a professionally done tour.
Yeah. It was probably too many dates. It was like a little bit out of arm's reach for us. Like as far as like, it was kind of like the threshold of being able to control things. I think it was just like a little bit further than arm's reach.
Yeah.
It had like this out of control factor.
Sure.
To it, you know?
Yeah. And we did. I mean, to be fair, at that time, we collabed on a couple tracks.
We did.
We put those out to promote the tour.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one track, Sting, I think at the time got a really good DJ reaction.
A bunch of people are playing.
Yeah.
that
Some
at the
people
time,
were playing that shit out. I mean, we were kind of figuring it out, but maybe it just wasn't all there yet. And I think, too, the scene was starting to change a little bit.
Yes, that is true. That is kind of like the...
Like the scene was maturing and operating at maybe a higher level or a more pro level. And I don't think we had put our touring business at that level.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
Like this like ambivalent industry was kind of like turning. And I think that's like the start of like the industry that we know today.
Right.
That's kind of like when it was really starting, and like it became like this crazy huge and in some cases publicly traded industry.
Yeah.
You know, that was like the very start of that, I think.
Right. I think that makes sense that maybe that's where we parted ways for doing shows for a long time, was that it started out of us getting together, started out of this frustration of these bigger companies that you were talking about, these big promoters.
Mm-hmm.
And these were discussions we would have on these long car rides, right?
Yeah.
Is like, you know, these big companies, these big festivals, these big name booking agencies, you know, all these people working with them, you know, that's what we got to get. How are these people doing these things, you know, and trading info and ideas and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
And by the end of that second tour, we were both kind of on the cusp of actually getting there.
Exactly,
you know?
yeah.
And maybe that's another reason why, not only because the tour wasn't the best tour of our lives, but it did just sort of seem like, you know, it's maybe time for a new chapter in what we're doing.
Exactly, yeah,
and
absolutely.
maybe we don't need to do it the old way anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good lesson in like adaptation too, you know?
Yeah. It's been so dope, man. Like I'm proud of you, man, to see where it's gone from that.
Thank you. I
You know,
appreciate that.
The music you're making now, I think, is such a great evolution of kind of the core that you've always had. How do you see yourself, I guess, fitting into what's happening now? Because I remember in the early days, we would talk, you know, you could play to a dubstep crowd.
Yeah.
You could play to more of a hip hop crowd, but it always sort of felt like you weren't really in any of the
No,
ones.
I was never really anywhere in particular like that.
And I always got a sense of frustration for you that maybe, you know, your music, you saw it differently than the way a lot of people saw it.
Yeah, I think I probably did. I think I definitely did, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. There was times that I felt like, I was like, I'm dancing to this different. I'm feeling this music differently than other people. And so now it's like, as the time has passed and I've kind of like been able to like conceptually progress in that regard, you know, just from the experience of being in front of crowds all the time.
And understanding the connection that you have to the music may be different from the connection other people have.
Exactly, yeah.
And figuring out that sweet spot in between.
Yeah. There's something to be said about presenting something in a way that's digestible. And I think a lot of that comes with a certain simplicity.
Do you feel at this point, do you feel like you fit into a scene that's going on, or do you still feel like you're kind of...
I still feel like I skirt the edges of like a few different things.
Yeah.
I think the place that I've been feeling a little bit more at home is, for lack of a better term, I know people have been calling it like the space bass world. Yeah, it's like kind of like the Wakan world and like the G Jones.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, we're all like vastly different.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, of course.
You know, Liquid Stranger, Space Jesus,
Would like
Lucid.
Bass Nectar be like the pope of that?
Good Lord, bless thee. Yeah. But yeah, no, like kind of in that world where it's like this kind of like almost West Coast inspired, but like very festival. A little bit more experimental, I guess.
Yeah, a little more groove focused.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, by no means am I putting myself next to like any of these guys.
No.
But that's kind of like a world that I've like I feel very comfortable in, and it also helps. It's like we're literally all of us are friends, too,
right?
You know?
No, of course.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's almost more important, I think, from the artist side, from the behind the scenes perspective, is really who are your friends? Like, and who do you look to for inspiration? Not really so much who do you sound like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even for you, like you and I don't sound anything alike, but I'll listen to one of your songs and get a ton of inspiration.
Absolutely.
From
And likewise.
it,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like I said, man, now you're at this point where I feel you've put this strong stamp of who you are and what you do. I think, like you said earlier, the front to back tune was kind of that next stamp of like, this is where it's at now, this is where it's headed.
Yeah.
And to watch you do that, again, like I'm not looking at it trying to figure out how you made that synth noise. I'm looking at it and realizing, oh, like this is who he is, and this is how he was able to present his art.
Yeah.
And I can take something from that in the way I present my art.
For sure, yeah. It's more than just like sound design.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something maybe people coming up miss a little bit is, the sound is very much tied to the person.
Yeah, very much.
So
yeah.
one person trying to copy another person's sound will almost never work because
they're not that person.
Yeah, it's not coming from the same place.
Yeah,
you know? For you now, like all I'm really trying to get at is what do you see coming up for yourself now?
I'm pretty pleased with this little path I've kind of set forth for myself. With the last handful of tracks, they've almost been like a little bit more headbangery, a little bit stompier.
That last one you sent me, that's not out yet, right?
Fairly certain.
Yeah, the super heavy one?
Yeah.
That tune's fucking great, and it's probably the heaviest thing I've heard from you.
It's out there, and that's a big product of my modular system,
right?
Too.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet.
Boy!
That's a game changer.
Yeah, that's honestly been my biggest source of inspiration now because like...
So talk about it for a minute. When did you first buy your first piece of modular outboard hardware?
I was very, very blessed and fortunate. I had a friend who is now living in Berlin doing the same thing. He was working for the Pittsburgh Modular Company. He like had a whole bunch of like, I guess, B stock modules basically sitting in his closet. And he was just like, I have no use for these things, and they're just mine. So he gave me like a handful of modules and a case, and I was just kind of like tinkering around. And then I started realizing it's like, holy shit, this thing sounds out of control. This thing is so sick. And so I started adding on to it and adding, and now I have this gigantic system. My case isn't even full yet, but it's like... It's just like so like otherworldly sounds that come out of this thing with like it's extremely humbling. I've told people this before that without anything in it, with all the cables out of it, without anything turned, it makes no noise.
Yeah.
So you have to like follow this signal path, and it's like not every single jack has a noise source into it. So it's like you have to trace this signal across the thing, and like all of these different elements affect the signal in different ways. And so it's like it's so humbling.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can be plugging stuff in and patching and following it around, and it can be silent for an hour. Because you're like, where is this going? Like,
and you don't get any presets,
Fuck no, yeah. And so you're literally just tracing this thing around. It's just like, what am I doing? But then you come upon like the sound, and you're just like, I am a goddamn genius.
Yeah. Is that something you really get into, the problem solving aspect? You kind of get.
I've become that way. Like I didn't. I had no idea what I was getting myself into initially.
Well, and so much of that, the modular stuff is used in house and techno music, which I know you love as well.
Yes, indeed.
I feel like some of those influences, do you think they show up in your music as Buku?
I think in like some ways.
Yeah. Not that you're out here making techno, but just certain choices you make or certain sounds you use.
I could, if we were to like run through tracks, I could like pinpoint like exact things. I'll double time tunes. Like if say I'm like working on something like 150, I'll put like a kick drum on, just that, and then like just make like a riding groove on that, and it kind of like in the like a techno fashion.
Yeah.
And you know that riding groove will end up getting deconstructed in various ways around the track.
Right.
But it's all kind of like there's a lot of stuff that's derived from just like that stompy 4 on the floor groove, regardless if it's transparent or not. You know?
And it's cool to hear that you've kind of, found, again, not a new sound, but just this new evolution of the sound that now you're working. And it seems like you've kind of reached that equilibrium point where the music you want to make is now also the music people want to hear. You sort of are in that sweet spot, I feel like.
It's been good, man. Yeah, like everything has been getting really good reception, and
you're touring like a maniac now. You're everywhere.
Yeah. I had a crazy last year, and the way this year is shaping up too, I'm gonna have an equally good year.
And you're on Circle now, right?
I am on Circle. Yeah,
It's crazy, man. We ended up on the same agency after all those years.
After all.
I hope we get to do more shows.
We should do some more shows.
I mean, we don't have to go on a tour, but like, I just hope we end up on some bills.
We should do that. Yeah, man. We should do that.
I don't know. I only have this kind of starting off DIY touring experience with you. I don't really have it with anyone else in the game.
Same. I know. Yeah, me neither, man. Yeah. No, we were very much going through the those learning curves together for sure.
Yeah, man. I know. I'm proud of you, man. It's good to see how far you've taken it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And it does feel like it's just getting started. I mean, what else? Anything people should look out for to turn this back into more of a standard interview?
Yeah. As far as music is concerned, I have this new track that's going to be coming out on the new Wakan compilation. Other than that, I mean, I've just been kind of structuring my touring so I have a little bit of time in between like clusters of touring so I can work in the studio. And so that's pretty much what I've been doing. And so I'm kind of building up my little bag of tricks again, schedules and plans to follow for that kind of stuff.
Well, fuck, man. I'm glad we did this. I love you, man.
Me too. I love you too, Willy.
Is there anything we didn't cover? I mean, we could keep going. We're not going to. But.
Fuck, we could sit here. I mean, the sun's going down. We could sit here well after sunset.
Yeah.
Let's watch this sunset together, Willy.
All right, everyone listening right now, I'll leave you with the mental image of me and Rob sitting high up in an LA hotel, holding hands, watching the sunset.
Sharing a blanket.
Yeah. In comfortable silence.
Yeah.
All right, that's the show. Thank you so much to Buku. So fun to sit down and do that, dude. We got to do a part 2 soon. To everybody listening, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this as much as I did recording it. Don't forget, Buku's new single, Heartbeat, comes out on 4/20 on Wakan Records. And don't forget to catch him this summer at all the festivals, Electric Forest, Bisco, all of that. I'm going to put a link in the description of this episode where you can go check out all of Buku's new music, new tour dates, all the good stuff. My name is Willy Joy. You can always email me at backtobackpod@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on social media at backtobackpod or at Willy Joy. I've been feeling like reading some more emails from you guys lately, so send me some good ones, ask me some good questions, and maybe your question will get on the show. That's about it for this week. I love you guys. I'll see you next Tuesday. This is Willy Joy for Back to Back. Peace.